This week we've got Tanya Collins joining me. Tanya, what do you do?
I'm a transformational coach, Phil. I help people transform how they respond and the things that they do. I help people who've got problems, but I also help people get peak performance and get better in themselves.
Brilliant. How long have you been doing that?
Approximately 7 years, probably about seven and a half years now.
Interesting.
So I started in 2014.
2014. The world was quite a different place back then, wasn't it?
Oh, flipping heck, yes. Hugely different, but blessed to still be here and in the position that I can help people.
What were you doing just before you became a transformational coach, and what made you transform into
a transformational coach. Okay, a bit of a prior my work before becoming a transformational coach. I worked in the prison service for 13 years, and I worked my way up through some schemes to become a senior manager in large West Midlands prisons. But during my work as an operational prison manager, a prison governor colloquially known, one of my bosses when I was at HMP Winson Green, Birmingham, sponsored me to do some training in neuro-linguistic programming to help folk to start using language to help a cultural change of the staff, because the prison was under an awful lot of pressure at the time and was subsequently market tested. And I enjoyed it so much that I self-funded. And then roll on a few years from when I decided to leave the prison service, an old colleague who I had shown some of this stuff to said, you need to train in this thing that my wife has just trained in. And then lo and behold, 6 months later, I set up as self-employed as a coach doing this kind of stuff.
What was it like going from quite a serious career to being self-employed?
Do you know what? It was quite an intuitive transition. I left the prison service because at the time there was a massive values clash and I didn't feel like the organisation was right for me anymore. And when I had decompressed, because I was really quite stressed, when I decompressed a bit and moved into this kind of coaching, I love what I do now. I loved what I did then, actually, because for many years, my career has been about people. And I've always enjoyed working with tricky people or challenging people with challenging issues. And prior to the prison service, I had done some work with some quite challenging folk in different guises with different organisations, which you can chat about if you want to. But essentially, the heart of what I do is it's always been about people. I've got other interests, but I love assisting people in different ways to get different outcomes.
What is it that keeps you going?
Okay, that's really hard to explain, because when I'm interacting with someone and they are genuinely getting a transformation from the inside out, which is why my business is called Creating core change from the middle. When people are getting a genuine transformation and they are changing the patterns to what is driving their problems, because we all run from programs. So I help people hack the program, change the program, and they get different results. When people get those different results and it's cleaner and it's smoother and it's safe, and they get that change relatively quickly, and then they report to me the changes that they've made, and there's an integrity and an honesty and a congruence in what they're saying, because that's their experience. I'm just a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. I'm a bit of a tool. Sorry, but I am a bit of a tool. I am the person who's just
I've
asking.
been called a tool many
I'm
times.
just asking daft questions to help someone make the change for themselves on the inside, and it's just a very elegant way of doing it. So it's the buzz of helping people get that change.
Is there still a stigma around what you do, and do you come across that often?
Yeah, I think in general people are cautious or curious, really concerned about what other people might think about going for some form of help, because predominantly my clients, I'm helping them from different issues, whether that's anxiety, depression. I've worked with addictions, suicidal ideation, self-harm. What I do is definitely coaching, but it has a therapeutic outcome in a very gentle way that's completely non-trauma focused. Although I do performance coaching as well. So in a way, I've deliberately set myself up in a very neutral space, which is not inhabited by other therapists. I am a coach. So people can come and see me about anything that might be bothering them. I haven't niched either, so maybe that's a bad thing, but I haven't. I've always had business. People can come and see me. It's how much they want the change. And I get that some people still might feel awkward about doing that. But the way I badge myself, I work with anything, so they don't have to tell people, and it's completely confidential in this space anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it does. You said that you've always had business. So going back to the early days, how did you get business?
Well, this is quite interesting. So my marketing has always been particularly bad, but I've always had word of mouth. So when I first set up, I was supported by the people who ran one of the shops in town previously, who I hired some space from, and they let me speak to their customers. And I started by giving out some really simplistic leaflets with a bit of colour on, a bit of words. And I would ask people, said, could you just look at my leaflet, please, and let me know what you think? And then they would invariably read it and then maybe ask me questions about what it was. And by that simplistic leaflet got some traction and got passed out, and I started getting clients. As soon as I started getting proper clients sitting down doing the work, because what I do works, I then started getting word of mouth. And in the last 7 years, there's only been 2 months where I haven't had new clients, one of which was in the pandemic, one of which was way back in 2016. But during that month, I was doing some freelance work as well.
Okay. So just talking a bit more about your industry, and would you say there is an industry, and are you different to therapists, counsellors, psychologists?
Yeah. Okay, firstly, I'm not what I'm not. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counsellor. I'm not a CBTer. I'm not an EMDRer. And I'm a coach. EMDR is eye movement desensitization stuff.
I've not heard of that
it's
one.
used therapeutically. But it's what I do is different and can outperform that in some cases. In fact, quite a lot of cases I've known of other people who've used it. That's a different discussion. In terms of there being an industry, yes, there is an industry for coaching. And there are a wide range of different types of coaches out there. And you can, I might not be the right person for lots of people to go and see. There are lots of coaches. So there are life coaches. There are other types of transformational coaches. Some do some similar things. Some do some different things. There are business coaches. There are, you name a sector. There's a coach that goes along with that sector. But what I do is pretty niche in the way it works, as opposed to what it achieves actually, because we do hack the program, whereas lots of other coaching is generative. So a quick description of that is a generative coach will speak to someone and cognitively get that person's resources from them, talk that through, how you're going to apply that in the future to get your goals, moving them into the future. Now, what that might be akin to is putting your foot on the accelerator. Now, a lot of people, whether they know it or not, have actually got their foot on the brake at the same time. So actually, if you try and accelerate when you've got your brake on, you could screw your engine up. You might even, you might, I'm going to swear then, I mustn't swear on a podcast.
No.
You might jigger up your engine, actually, and you might screw your brakes. So actually, the kind of coaching I do is I help people identify where they want to go, but before we accelerate, we help them take their foot off the brake so that when they do accelerate, and we can do the generative coaching as well into the future, they actually go faster, smoother, and without jiggering in their engine. And they've got much more headspace and much more capacity for that higher performance growth and development. So yeah, what I do is a bit different.
I want to get a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
Have you had to have coaching
Oh, yeah.
yourself?
Oh, yes.
And how do you get through life's troubles?
Okay, so when I learned this kind of coaching, we all had to practice on each other. So we learned how to do it and what it feels like to receive it. But because this is transformational, I periodically get coaching anyway. So my rule of thumb for my clients is if something hijacks you so much you can't get through it and it really stops you in your tracks and you can't get through it, then come and see me. Or if there is something in your life that's an irritant and it keeps on prodding you and you can't seem to cognitively get past it, then also you can come and see me and get that sorted. So for me, because when I coach people, I mustn't cover up the microphone. When I coach people, I need to be in a clean and clear space, energetically, emotionally. I need to be able to hold the space to be able to have someone come in with some really difficult stuff to be able to help them move through it. If I get triggered by anything and I can't deal with it or I can't get through it, then I go and see a coach. So on average, that's been in the last 6, 7 years, on average, that's been once every 6 months. In the last year, in the last 18 months, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 bits of coaching myself.
Yeah,
So
so
I will periodically go off and have some stuff done. And then it clears out my system and it leaves me even keeled again in a very, very congruent way that, I mean, if you imagine a human being is like an onion, we've got lots of layers, we've got lots of learnings underneath. And as you take off the layers that are on the top, you can get yourself into quite a smooth, even keeled space. But occasionally, sometimes the next layer of onion is going to get a prod. It's going to get a poke and you're going to taste a bit of onion. So if you want to kind of get rid of the onion, just get rid of the next layer.
yeah, that's fascinating. So this last 18 months, 2 years has obviously been really difficult.
Yeah.
How has things, in your opinion, changed in terms of how you work? Are your clients coming with new issues that relate to being isolated?
Yeah. Yeah. The impact on individuals has been massive. So if you imagine that every single one of us already has an emotional pot because of our just previous learnings. And what can happen is when people are put under massive stress, which is what the last 18 months has been for people, that pot, that emotional pot, that pot of petrol that I quite often call it, really gets agitated and sometimes gets spiked. And because people have been in new and novel situations, they might have been either isolated by themselves, they might have been having to live in a space with a partner where they've not had any space from. Might have been homeschooling, they might have had financial difficulties, they might have had all kinds of other things, as well as illness and fear of whatever's going around, weighing into the mix. So you start layering those on, and that pot of petrol can go boom for people. So I have worked with people who felt very isolated. I've worked with people with massive OCDs who were frightened to leave their room, who incidentally now are out and about doing normal things. Or where people have felt suicidal as a result of that level of isolation. And that's now, those people, they're okay now. They might come back for a top-up every now and again, but actually getting people back to an even keel is what I do, and I can do it relatively quickly, really safely.
So looking forward, how does the next 12 months look for you? Have you set goals? Do you do that? Is that a thing you
It's
do?
really interesting. I'm in the process of kind of transitioning my business a little bit. It's quite interesting, dropping back to when I left the prison service. The person who sponsored me to initially train in something similar to this always said to me in the service, trust your intuition. But because it was such a rules-based organisation where if you make a mistake, not good, for people's safety, for people's health and well-being, and all that stuff that went along with that. So when I actually decided to leave the prison service, that was very much, it needed to happen, but it was also very much an intuition-based thing because I had no plans, I had no goals, I had no job to go to, but I knew I'd be fine. and I left, and I was fine, and I am fine. So I've also been on a pretty big personal spiritual journey over the last few years, and I really trust my intuition. And in that end, I set some goals, but I also have a looseness around some of what I do because I go with the flow, because the quantum field, there is a science to this, the quantum field has got infinite opportunities in it, and I'm open to those.
What is the one thing that you would say makes you successful?
Okay, there's something about intent, and there is something about positive intent. And when I am interacting with people, and this has actually been a guiding light through my whole career, when I interact with people, I treat people like an absolute equal. And my intent for people is that my interaction comes from it sounds a bit woo-woo, but my interaction comes from my heart, and I have an unwavering positive intent for the outcome, for that person, that conversation, that meeting, whatever it is. Now, there's some science behind this, but our intent has an energy to it, and that impacts the outcomes. So regardless of what I've done, I've always had that through my career. My dad actually taught me that, when you're in an organisation, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the cleaner, you're still a human being, you're still a cog, you're still part of it. So no matter what we each individually do, we each bring something really unique and really important to the mix. And in this line of work, I might only be with somebody for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, and it might only be a small jigsaw piece of their life. But without that jigsaw piece, they might not be able to build the next jigsaw piece. So no matter what little I do or how much I do, when I bring positive intent to that mix, there is an impact. It's like the butterfly effect. There will be a positive ripple somewhere. I might not see it, but it might be paid forward. Somebody else might feel the benefit of that ripple. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And you've gone full circle on the jigsaw piece as well.
Did
That
I
was a
say
really
jigsaw
good
at
way.
the beginning?
Yes, you did.
Oh, did I? Oh, goodness.
No, it's lovely. And thank you so much for talking to me.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Phil, for asking me.
That's all right. We'll see you again soon.